It is microphone turning on time. What day is it? It is May 13th, 2025, and our study session of the Town Board of Estes Park is in session. I want to thank Officer Mishala for being here, and we have Chief Stewart, who is the first on the agenda, to talk about flock safety cameras.
Looks like I got the green light, so I won't mess that up this time like I usually do. Thank you, trustees, Mayor Pro Tem is here, is she? But thank you for all the reports that I'll be giving tonight. The first one I wanted to start with is the purpose of it is to begin some discussions on possible implementation of license plate readers for us here in Estes Park and have board input and direction regarding possible use of this technology by the police department. I'd also like to introduce Kristen McLeod. She's joining us virtually right now, and she'll be helping me with this presentation and to add some subject matter expertise to any questions that might come along the way with this. I think we're all very comfortable with the fact there's around 6,000 residents here in Estes Park and another roughly 6,000 in the unincorporated around us. But most of our crimes here in Estes Park are somehow related to transient traffic into and out of town on a daily basis. Often this involves the use of a vehicle, and even when the vehicle is not a tool of the crime itself, it is almost always a mode of transportation that the suspected perpetrators utilize. We commonly see these crimes perpetrated in Estes Park by individuals that are from the outside of our town here, coming up from the valley, usually Denver area, Longmont, Loveland, Fort Collins. We've apprehended individuals wanted from other jurisdictions on numerous occasions who've chosen to come to our neighborhoods to avoid apprehension as well. So it's not just the crimes that are occurring, but it's this perspective for some reason that people think they can come to Estes Park and hide from the law. There's a number of communities and agencies within Boulder County and Larimer County that currently utilize license plate reader technology as an investigative tool. And the town does not currently have a technological resource such as an LPR in place to assist with investigating the path of criminals and suspected criminals who travel into and out of our town. And quite frankly, and you're going to hear this from me several times tonight in different presentations, Highway 36, Highway 7, Highway 34, those things that in some ways are a huge liability to us during crisis or getting in and out of town also can be our greatest strength as we try to protect this town from the criminal element. A couple of cases in specific has happened within the last year since I've been here. Two very high profile cases. One was the shooting incident where two of our local teenagers had rounds go in their direction from people from the Denver metro area. That case was actually broke by one of these flock license plate readers that is in Lyons. I'm not saying we might not have been able to solve that case without that, but it got us way ahead of the game and it gave us an investigative lead that put us in a position to get that case solved. The other one is, if you remember, in November of 2024, we had multiple vehicle trespasses and vehicle thefts that occurred in the string of one criminal episode that evening. And this would have been crucial in solving that as well. And that's still an open case for us that we're still continuing to try to investigate. But had this technology been in place and we would have the opportunity to know that night when those stolen vehicles left town, it would have been a huge asset for us coordinating with other agencies in the region to get those vehicles stopped while the crime is already going on. And with that quick little statement about that, I'm going to hand this off to Ms. McLeod, who is going to go over the next slide with me, and I'm going to keep track of myself. So I'm going to let her start talking about this slide that's up right now.
Great, thank you so much, Chief Stewart. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. My name is Kristen McLeod, and I'm a Public Affairs Manager with Flock Safety. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some time and information with you all. So a really quick background on Flock as a company. We were founded in 2017 by our CEO, Garrett Langley, after he himself and his neighbors experienced an uptick of crime in their neighborhood. They went to their local law enforcement. They were experiencing mainly property crimes. And so they went to local law enforcement with some personal doorbell footage of the individuals perpetrating the crimes. And said, here you go, go get them, and hopeful that it would bring an investigative lead and an end to the crime that was happening. And unfortunately, law enforcement said, this isn't quite enough. It's not enough of an investigative lead for us to pursue. And so Garrett, an engineer by trade, got to thinking, well, what would provide you all with the information to be able to locate the individuals responsible? And he learned that number one, license plate reading has been around since the 1970s. And why it's critical to law enforcement is that the majority of crimes are committed in conjunction with use of a vehicle. And so having these objective vehicle details was really important. And so he set out to create a product that was ethical, efficient, and also affordable for different sized agencies, and really focused on getting the right information to the right people, law enforcement officers, at the right time. And so Flock really has seen nationally that law enforcement resources are stretched quite thin. Your officers wear many different hats, from addressing mental health crises to the in-house population, on top of preventing and solving crime. And to make matters a bit worse, many agencies are experiencing a really tough time recruiting and retaining officers in the face of, with retirements, et cetera. So with all of that being really challenging, many cities are turning to technology to not replace officers by any means, but really to provide them a tool to help them with precision policing and based on objective evidence. So we call this collaborative policing technology. It's a force multiplier, enabling agencies of all sizes, again, to solve crime more quickly and efficiently without increasing staffing. And next slide, please. So Flock, we're very proud to say that we work in over 5,000 communities nationally, and we are helping solve 10% of reported crime in the US. You have over 1,000 mission-driven employees that are very dedicated to this mission and providing an ethical tool. Flock operates as a safety as a service, so it's a subscription type model. And we did that very intentionally so that with the license plate readers, Flock provides the hardware. We own the hardware, and that means that we maintain the hardware. We proactively monitor the system's health. You all will be, when a community is under contract with us, they receive software upgrades, hardware upgrades to keep the system functioning and current. So it's really all about providing the tools to your officers. Permitting assistance, we provide permitting assistance. We really wanted this to be as infrastructure free as possible. So it's a plug and play tool for officers. And the next slide, please. And in my opinion, I think this is probably the most important information. And their Flock was really built with privacy in mind, and we take that very seriously. And there are quite a few that the cameras are capturing is owned by our customers. It would be owned by your city, by the police department, and will never be sold to private third parties. That also means that the police department in the city is within full control over which other law enforcement agencies that the town would elect to share data with, if any. And there is great benefit, and I'm sure Chief can express even more, but great benefit to breaking down those communication silos with other law enforcement agencies, whether that be in your region or even statewide, nationally, if you choose. Again, it's all owned by our customers, so highly the ability to tailor that sharing of information and control over that. The next point is that Flock has a default 30-day data retention, and we did this also very intentionally We believe that the 30-day mark is protecting your constituents' privacy while also providing the police investigative value. So we've learned that sometimes some crimes don't get reported for a couple weeks or sometimes even longer than that. And this provides the opportunity for your detectives, your officers to look in the system.
You're occasionally cutting out. If you can hear me, you cut out again a few seconds ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Hopefully, I'm wondering if maybe I turn my video off, that might help. Okay, we will try this. Please interrupt if
Oh,
it cuts out
okay.
again.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Um, so with the data retention default, providing a balance between privacy and investigative value, any images that are not retained as part of a criminal investigation are hard deleted and unrecoverable at the 30-day mark. No individual personal data is retained in the flock system. There are no addresses, phone numbers, no personal information. It's simply a still image of the rear of a vehicle that is captured on a public roadway. And the cameras are positioned so that they are focused on the rear of a vehicle. Security is also paramount. So while there's no personal information in the flock system, all of the data is end-to-end encrypted and stored in the AWS cloud. We also fully support accountability and transparency. And we do this by, in the system, if a detective or officer were to search for historical information, a search reason and user number is saved indefinitely, which creates an audit trail, and that allows chief and the administrators of the system to ensure that the system is being utilized in accordance with department policy. And then we also offer a free and optional transparency portal. And what that does is it's a flock generated public facing web page that provides your community members information on how the department is utilizing the system, including acceptable and prohibited uses, and can even share information on what other law enforcement agencies that your department has elected to share information with. And I believe I will pass it back to Chief now.
I can say for me personally, as well as us as a department, these privacy issues are our utmost concern, and that's why I really like the transparency that comes from this. In fact, I want to be so transparent in it, talking about any form we can, that these are a deterrent to anyone even coming up here because they know these would exist around town. Advantages, though, is that it just quickly helps us identify stolen vehicles and track vehicles alleged to be involved in any crime. And it provides real-time alerts and information. This definitely would help out our patrol efficiency. If you will notice from your packet, our vision for these is not to be in the middle of town. It's not to be around this building. It's to set up a digital perimeter around our town along 36, 34, 7, and County Road 43, so that it's really monitoring what's coming in and out of our community and not the inner workings in our community. But by having those resources out there, I can be more encouraging of my officers to be, hey, let's be doing foot patrols downtown. Let's be in the school, you know, and not worrying about so much of these other things that Flock can cover for us. It just will allow us to be much more productive and effective in our other patrol duties. This is excellent evidence for us in any crime we have because it is that snapshot of the rear of the vehicle. It is not subject to human error and bias. You know, a blue Corolla with ABC 123 as a license plate is what it is, and it's not, well, I saw a 0 and it was actually the letter O as I remember a plate or something like that. Definitely helpful in improving our traffic safety in that this will let us know when there's unregistered vehicles or uninsured vehicles, the way it ties into the system, something that will absolutely make our streets safer to be at. The resource optimization piece of this is something I also very, very much like. This is a force multiplier, as she spoke about earlier. And again, this gives us a chance to do a lot more community engagement because we can focus on those things and focus on the areas where we're having crime or we want more officer interaction and not worried about the perimeter of our town. And then the last piece is just an increased officer awareness to overall public safety. And I say public safety at a high level. Silver alerts, amber alerts, missing children, things that we want to throw everything at. It would be great to know when we had a missing elderly person that got in their car and drove away and didn't end up at their destination, which way did they go outside of town, so we can start directing in people to start helping with those situations that aren't necessarily criminal in nature, may or may not be criminal in nature, but we want to try to do everything we can to throw out the success of recovering those circumstances. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ms. McLeod for this slide.
Thank you. Yes, as Chief was mentioning, in addition to the helping with solving crimes, these are license plate readers. We actually last month just hit over 1,000 persons. We've assisted first responders in locating over 1,000 missing persons. So we're very proud of that statistic. This is an example shared with us by O'Fallon Police Department in Missouri. This is a story of an 87-year-old woman who left her residence to attend a doctor's appointment. I believe she was in the early stages of Alzheimer's and was still operating a vehicle. She went to a doctor's appointment. Several hours later, her daughter reported her missing. She hadn't come home and was quite worried. That information, the vehicle information, was entered into the flock system. And 15 minutes later, that vehicle happened to pass by a camera in the community. So they were able to direct first responders to a location where they were able to locate her and return her safely home. And then the next slide is a story. This was actually the first child abduction that Flock LPRs assisted police with. Luckily, these types of abductions do not occur often. They're very rare. When they do occur, it's critical that they are located, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack oftentimes. And so when this 1-year-old was taken from their mom by 2 armed strangers and fled in a vehicle, witnesses were able to provide first responders with, I believe they actually had a partial plate at that moment. Later on, the suspects took the plate off and switched it with another, but the witness provided a really good vehicle description. And so the Flock system is also able to utilize partial plates and vehicle details. It's not necessary that officers have a full plate information. So using that vehicle description, they were able to create a custom alert. And within 5.5 hours, a very long story short, it passed the suspect vehicle. They were able to get some very critical investigative leads on the direction of travel, and utilizing other law enforcement resources and databases, were able to locate the suspects. 5.5 hours later, the baby was reunited with their mom. So very proud of that story, and again highlights the public safety use for these LPRs. And I believe passing it back to Chief, maybe?
Yes, and so from there, it just kind of transitioned to addressing a lot of those transparency and regional implementation concerns that we've already talked about, because this is very, very important to us, the transparency piece and all that. So we spoke a little bit earlier about the transparency portal that can be authored through Flock, and so we want to talk a little bit about that right now, what that looks like and how that works.
Thank you. So as I mentioned before, we have a optional and customizable feature called our transparency portal, and this is Denver's. And it's a Flock-generated, public-facing web page, and you'll see there it's probably really small text, but they have included that big block of text is a listing of every single law enforcement agency that Denver has elected to share their information with. And so it's right there for the community to see. They've also included some important policy information, such as acceptable uses and prohibited uses of the system. I believe it's really tiny on my screen, but I believe they've also elected you, and departments can choose to share the number of cameras that are in the community, and some other high level stats such as how many hot list alerts were received and even how many searches were conducted by the department within the last 30 days. And this is refreshed every 24 hours. So the community has the most updated information. And we strongly encourage departments and cities to adopt this feature. And then while this is a public-facing community webpage on the system, we offer an insights dashboard, and this is where the chief and administrators of the Flock system from the police department can really look at crime patterns and return on investment. You know, what types of crimes are we impacting? Is it having the impact on community safety that we expected? Are officers using it? So that way, when it comes time to make decisions about continuing with the tool, their information is there. And that's also where the audit search history lives as well. I think I'm passing it back to Chief.
So we, by no means, if we were able to go in this direction, would be blazing the trail with this. Every county, all the 4 counties around us already have this. Loveland does, Lafayette does, Timnath does, DPD, like we've already talked about, does. And it was actually, like I said earlier, Cameron Lyons from the Boulder County Sheriff's Office that broke a big case for us. And already there is one of these cameras that's on the west side of Loveland that we've gotten cooperation with the Sheriff's Office and their deputies to interdict people coming up the canyon. We just don't have it on this end to go the other direction. So this is something that's broadly used throughout northern Colorado and all of Colorado. Like all things, though, there are definitely disadvantages to this, as we've spoke about in depth, privacy concerns. That's just something that we've talked about, but it's something that you can't go without saying. Along those lines, potential misuse. All of the records in PD, this included, have the opportunity for an officer that using it in a manner that we wouldn't approve. It's something we'd obviously immediately address and take appropriate action on, but the potential for it is there. Financial cost is a potential as well. These things obviously do cost money ongoing. It's a yearly subscription, as we've talked about. Another disadvantage would be the dependence on technology. I will be the first to tell you that there's nothing better than old school police work. Something that we very much want to keep continuing doing around here, and we can't become complacent because we have this program on our MDTs that would be the easy button. It's going to be a partnership between hard work and technology that's going to make us successful. And then kind of tying into the privacy concerns or the overall legal and ethical issues. Like I said, this is not new technology. We're not blazing a trail, but with any LPR system, you could have the chance for some sort of legal challenge. And that pretty much concluded my presentation, our presentation, but I would imagine there could be a potential for many questions with this. And so I would turn it over to whatever those may come.
I'll speak first for a second. I'm actually quite in favor of the technology, and I think there's protections in there. I mean, a officer of the law could misuse the current tools they have.
Yes, sir.
This is an additional tool that has great opportunity for increased safety and crime solving and maybe even prevention with people knowing we're doing it. And so I'm pretty much weighing in on the positive side. But I also wanted to take the microphone because Trustee Mark Eigel couldn't be here today. He had an email exchange with you in the public forum, and he sent it to me to make sure there was a reference to it. He does believe that there should be community dialogue, that we should have the opportunity, and, you know, one of the coffee and tea with the PD, or some other opportunities where people who are interested in it can get more information and can raise pros and cons and opinions. So, with that said,
Thank you for the presentation, and thanks, it's Kristen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you as well. A couple of questions. One, some of them you already answered through the presentation, which was great, but one of the questions I had about the other area agencies that use Flock is there, are each of our kind of like databases / dashboards, those are private to us as an agency, right? And not, or are they accessible by some of these other agencies that use Flock as well? So I know there's a lot of cross-agency collaboration, like the whole point would be so that we could, if things were coming and going from the community, we could engage. But I'm curious about where the data silos start and end.
How about I start and then I'll let Kristen pick it up
great.
with the expertise. Right now, we would control all that, who would and wouldn't allow to share with. I would be a strong advocate for at least sharing with like Boulder County, Loveland, Larimer County, where our arteries are going to bleed out into. Because another piece of that I'm very interested in is that reciprocation of that. Like I told a little story already about the Lions Flock camera helping us out and the one on the west side of Loveland helping us out. We are having to do that through communications and partnerships with those agencies in the good old-fashioned telephone game. If we got into this technology and did reciprocating agreements with some specific agencies, we would know when one of our stolen vehicles hit a Flock camera in Timnath, let's say. So definitely want to put some guardrails on who we would share that with and who we want our partners to be in that, but we control that and we would make those decisions based on the right reasons. And I'll kind of stop and let Kristen pick up from there.
Yes, Chief, that is correct. And Flock wanted to make this very, very easy for communities to delineate the sharing. And so you are able to, share those search privileges with other law enforcement agencies. You can also not share those search privileges and just share alerts. So again, it's highly customizable and that's within full control of the department. And it's very, very user-friendly to be able to, if you decide one time that you do not want to share, then it's with a click of a button, you can rescind those sharing privileges.
Okay, thank you.
And something important that I would like to add, if you do elect to share the search or access to the camera data, anyone who is external of Estes Park Police Department, if they are searching for historical information, their search reason and user number ID is also captured and retained indefinitely. So that is also available for audit.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And as long as we're kind of talking more, some details on operational, you mentioned the main arteries, Chief, about, where you might find those valuable. I know it seems like this would be a really far down the road, per se, kind of like a more detailed request or question, but do you have an idea of how many cameras, like where they would be, how does like wherever we mount them, if those are going to be on state highways, like how does that all work?
That is a fantastic question. And Internal Services Director Featherston and I have been working with Flock, and we do have those most probable locations identified. And what I mean by that is Highway 36 right on the other side of Mall Road, so that you couldn't sneak by the camera by getting on Mall Road off of 36, then getting up to 34. So along 34, just right around the area of Mall Road, where we would want to make sure anyone coming up from Loveland is going to hit that camera and couldn't slip by getting on Mall Road. Anyone coming up 36, same thing. Highway 7, same thing. And when you look at that, the only other two ways in and out of town are over Trail Ridge or County Road 43. And so above the switchbacks, about halfway between the switchbacks and outside of town. And I believe there's a map in the handout. We've identified those there. The interesting thing is it takes 2 cameras because you need one coming and one going because you're only catching the tail end of the car. And so those 4 locations would need 8 cameras. But we feel like that covers everything but Rocky Mountain National Park. I feel very strongly that it's very rare that that criminal element is going out up and over Trail Ridge. And they do have some of their own capabilities up there that we can ask for help with should that day come. So that's kind of where we got 4 locations with 8 cameras. And like I said, I think everybody remembers some of the things I did and said during Alexander Fire. Those limited ways into town like are a nightmare, but for something like this, I feel like we're putting this digital vanguard around town to make an incredible impact on crime and just that overall general public safety of someone who's just gone missing and maybe it's not criminal at all.
Okay, thanks. And another thing you'd mentioned in the memo in the packet was the possibility of grant funding. So, and then I think you said as well that ideally, if the board gave direction to move forward with this, or the community was supportive of it, and all those things we've talked about a little bit already, would we budget then for 2026 and hope that if grant funding becomes available, then we just find other uses for those dollars? So that would that be your vision in terms of timing and funding?
It would be. I'd definitely take any suggestions that the finance director or Director Featherston had. But I think to get our foot in the door, that's what it would look like. And then year to year, we'd apply for anything we could possibly get to offset that.
Thank you.
So, Chief, how's it monitored? Do the officers have access to it, their MDTs in their vehicles, or does dispatch monitor it? And when somebody gets flagged or looking for a vehicle, does it pop up in the MDTs, or dispatch have to have equipment or something? And we need to add something there to notify, or how does that work?
Yep, I'm gonna give you the quick answer, then I'm gonna let Kristen get into the details. So yes, the MDTs will get the alert, even the officers' phones can get the alert, and dispatch can get the alert, and I'll let Kristen talk to you about how that happens.
Yes, thank you. So as Chief mentioned, that is tailored. Chief can decide how the information gets to his staff, whether that be dispatch or again through the MDTs or on their work cell phones. We have a mobile application. And what happens is with regard to alert, when a wanted vehicle passes by a camera in a community, that alert will be sent and the officers will be notified. This is a very conservative time frame, but will be notified within about 20 seconds that that wanted vehicle has passed by that camera, and will provide that location information as well.
Can I just do a follow-up? So then, but who does it get it in? So we're looking for a vehicle that's been stolen. Can the officer enter it in, or does dispatch do that, or is there some staffing that requires that when we're looking for this particular vehicle? How does it get into the system in the first place?
There's several ways, and I'll let Kristen, she can talk about it much more eloquently than I can.
So we are integrated with the National Crime Information Center. And what that is law enforcement agencies throughout the nation say there is a stolen vehicle from Estes Park, and an Estes Park officer will enter that stolen vehicle information into NCIC, essentially kind of reporting it to this database. So if that car were to pass by a camera in a neighboring county that clock is in, those deputies or officers would receive an alert that that wanted vehicle has passed by a camera in the community. So NCIC is one way. And then we also are integrated with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So any vehicles associated with an Amber Alert, that vehicle description would be entered in and officers would be alerted to that vehicle. And then the other way is we offer the ability for Estes Park Police Department to create a custom hot list alert. And so with NCIC and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there can be some lag in time of getting that information into the system, and those systems refresh over many hours. and Flock refreshes double that. So we're very current with the alert information. Sometimes that alert needs to be entered immediately. And the example that comes to mind is, say there is a mental health crisis and someone, a family member is very concerned about someone's well-being, and that information is relayed to your Estes Park Police Department. They can enter that person's vehicle information into the Flock system, creating a custom hot list alert. And that is immediately when is created in the system, so that if that individual who is in crisis, their vehicle passes by the camera, officers will be alerted that that vehicle passed by.
Thank you. There's been some great information. It is exciting. One of the questions I have is, you said that it only takes a picture of the back, but yet you need a forward and a passing, a camera on both sides, coming and going. So will it take a picture of the front plate as well? Since you said there's 2 cameras?
Go ahead, Kristen.
No, so the cameras are focused to capture the rear of vehicles. They would not be directed to capture the front plate.
So you're needing 2 cameras, one for each lane?
Yeah.
Okay, just ding, ding.
Yep,
Okay.
like east and west.
Right, right, okay, okay. And, so it sounds like there's not gonna be any added staff time, to this, or any additional equipment other than just the purchase of this packet, you know, the cameras, and then, of course, the software. For the updates, like, your yearly subscription, how have you seen that increase over time, percentage-wise, for those that have already had it? Like, what kind of increase could we expect to see?
Thank you so much for that question. So we've had one price increase since 2017, and I believe that was a couple years ago, and it was a $500 increase per camera per year. We are really, we want agencies to be able to access this technology, and so we work really hard to make sure that, you know, I can't predict the future, but I have not heard anything about any sort of price increase in the near future. And of course, with the contract, we would be, if something like that were to occur, I know our sales team would be in connection with Chief very early with that information.
Okay. Also, so you're putting these cameras out. These cameras need Wi-Fi? And if so, have you tested that? Speak on that.
Yes, thank you so much. So we actually operate on cellular networks, on LTE, and our technicians will go out to the sites and make sure that they're accessing the strongest signal possible. So we make sure that that is all functioning, but it's over a cellular network.
Okay, so all of the spots you've looked at, obviously, they're going to pass, and they're going to be able to adequately handle those cameras and the information.
We believe so. We were such in the early stages of this and wanting to get some board input and direction on it that we believe we've actually had people out at those sites yet. That would be the next step. But anecdotally, we feel like those are good spots, but we'll know for sure once the techs actually go out there and do the test.
Because I didn't know if there's going to be added expense to get that internet, you know, closer to those cameras, or what. So.
I think what the answer would be is we'd have to potentially look at alternative camera sites rather than the other way around.
Okay.
And probably maybe get ahead of the next question is, it was surprising to me is that these do just fine and are powered by solar, so we don't have to worry about dragging power to them either.
Okay. Thank you.
We're getting close to the time allotted for this, and I want to make sure that the trustees weigh in as to whether they want Chief Stewart to proceed and the town administrator on the next steps with this project. But first, Mayor Pro Tem Sinek.
So I hate to sound like the conspiracy theorist here. I don't particularly care for it. And the reason why is I don't want people in Boulder knowing I'm leaving town. I don't want people in Boulder knowing I'm going to a political rally. I don't want people in Boulder knowing that I'm going to a certain church. And I get where you're putting the cameras. I understand that. And not that I don't trust you. That's not the issue. Do I trust the next chief? I don't know. Do I trust all the police officers in the police department? I trust ours. Do I trust everybody in Boulder? I don't know. You know, that's what I don't like about it. I don't like that it's 30 days. I don't think it's shared. I don't like that it's shared other places. And I get the good parts of it. There's no question. You know, you have a kid missing, you have a criminal, 100%. I think those are wonderful things. The problem is I think that the everyday citizen deserves some kind of privacy. And I think that we've lost a lot of that. You go to the airport, they take a picture of your face. You know, and I just think it's almost like a sci-fi movie, and I get it. You know, maybe I'm watching too many movies. I don't know. But in 20 years, you know, are going to be walking down the street, and they're going to say, you know, that genetics of that person is, I don't know. And it just hits me in the gut. Is I don't like it. And I think that before we did that, we would, I agree with Eigel in the fact that we'd have to have a lot of community input. Because all the good factors, and I don't say any of those things are not great factors. I think they're all great factors. It's that innocent people don't need to be watched 24 hours. And that's my problem with it, is that innocent people that have no criminal activity are being, for other words, big brothered 24 hours. And I just don't, it just gives me a bad, icky feeling. So what I would say is I would not be for it unless we had so much community input that the community was really backing it, because, and talk about both sides, not all the good factors, because there are good factors. Like I said, you went through a bunch of them, and I can't argue with any of those. I think they're all great factors. And the fact that I trust our police department, the fact that I trust you. But the whole thing to me gives me a very icky feeling, and I can't not express that. So I just think that every innocent person in the world should not have to suffer for the criminals in the world. And that's kind of what I'm finding the world's going to, right, wrong, or other. I mean, I'm back to where TSA shouldn't be what it should be, you know, so, you know, I understand the need for it. I understand the pluses, but I think it's a slippery slope to the minuses. That's my thoughts.
I figure I'm on camera every store I go into here in Town Hall. Certainly these other agencies that have it widespread and everything. But I already weighed in on my favoritism for the program. Any other opinions, general opinions, since we're a long ways from defining and budgeting it?
Just a quick question. I know this is a hot button one right now, and I know Denver looked at this, but can federal agencies access this information for what they're doing, or?
No, because we wouldn't allow them to. One, you know, what you spoke of being ICE. ICE is not a client of theirs. And then even if they were, we would not share it with them. You know, they.
We have the ability to do that.
Yes, correct.
Do you want it back? Okay. Like anything we do, I think having community input would be a key thing, and I think folks have an opportunity to do that at this point and any time moving forward. And I think it's helpful for us to particularly solicit that, letting folks know that this kind of thing is something we're discussing. But I feel that about basically every study session agenda item, is that this is the time when I hope people will weigh in and share their thoughts and pay attention to what's going on. But that said, I think an additional layer of enticing people to come to the table and give their opinion on it is certainly helpful. Do I think that, I mean, the issue is that we don't have a problem until we have a problem, and we wish we had this. So I don't want to get to a point where we have some sort of monumental or terrible thing happen and we say, you know, if we don't have the flock cameras, we say, wow, we really wish that we had done that, and we've missed the opportunity to improve the safety of our community or save somebody's life or something like that. So I'm with Mayor Hall, and that I pretty much anticipate that everywhere I'm being either recorded or tracked via my phone and devices I carry around with me. My car even has connectivity, and most new cars do. So while I wish I had more privacy as an individual, I think there are a lot of things that have sailed about that in terms of how our culture operates now, unfortunately. And so if we can take advantage of tools to improve our efficiency as a department, improve our safety as a community, I'm tentatively interested in moving forward, especially hearing the recommendation of some of our area agencies and how they've been able to help us out because of the flock cameras that they've had. So that's where I'd be right now. I'd like to see us move forward on it. And again, I do think community input is really important, but I feel that way. I hope that folks will weigh in now and as we go through this process, because I feel that way about all of our study session agenda items.
Yeah, I'm interested in this concept. I would also be interested in perhaps visiting with Fort Collins Department, find out what their take. Obviously, they weren't listed, so I don't think they're utilizing it. I would kind of like to know, maybe their take as to why they didn't implement it, or if they're thinking about it. I too am concerned about privacy, but I'm interested in hearing what the people of our community have to say about it. And we can't do that. And, I don't think it's fair to just say no or yes. I think we need to get it out there. I think we need to have engagement with our citizens and also maybe some other communities that are close by that haven't implemented, maybe to get a different take on it. But I think it has definite merit, even though there are some underlying issues that I agree with Marie on. But I'd like to move forward to hear what people are having to say about this option.
Sure. And I don't want to take too much time, Trustee. I know my next portion won't go its full length. It'll be quick. But Fort Collins went with a competitor. They were the first to the scene in northern Colorado when I was with my previous agency. They went with LSAG, which is a different one. And now, just in the last 6 months, they've rolled out a whole new carpet of along 3 of their big major thoroughfares, the speed cameras that are actually taking a picture of your face now as well. So I think Fort Collins actually is treaded into that a lot more and a lot quicker than everybody else. We just didn't list them because unless Kristen knows something I don't, they're going with a different company rather than Flock.
You'll get all the time you need anyway on
Oh,
it. But I think there's enough that have been said. Let's move forward on studying further with community input and potentially other partner agencies down the hill. Okay, you can move forward, Chief Stewart, on to the next item, the noise ordinance enforcement.
So this one, there is no attachment in there. This is just a briefing from me. And I just wanted to come back and give some information to the board on what we've been doing in the PD. I think this was something I committed to following up with you on. On April 15th, we conducted a noise ordinance enforcement training. That was a presentation that was given by our town prosecutor, Avi Rockland. Dan Kramer, town attorney, contributed and participated in that as well. And in addition to that occurring in one of our normal in-service trainings, which hits about half of our officers because the other half are actually working, we recorded it, and we recorded it in a manner so that everybody in the department could have it for one, but also when we're onboarding future staff, we've been lucky enough to grab 2 great officers in the last couple of weeks and month, that they could just have that presented to them as something they could see as part of their onboarding process. But also 2 years from now, if the ordinance hasn't changed, we can just make it a video that they can watch even middle of the night if they're on working nights to get a refresher on what that looks like. That training consisted of reviewing the elements of the ordinance, including what Ms. Rockland needs for a successful prosecution. When is the ordinance applicable, when it's not, and she did a lot of good work on articulating what is reasonableness through the lens of the officer and kind of discussing that with them. And then at the conclusion of it, I also reviewed my expectations on the noise ordinance enforcement. Just wanted to make sure we were coming back to you to let you know that that did get followed up with, not only for the here and now, but hopefully easily accessible follow-up in the future in the manner it was recorded. Sir, but do you think I missed anything?
Well, thanks. Obviously, the trustees probably have a little PTSD over just talking about noise ordinances, but the fact that it's business as usual, but with more and more awareness and knowledge of the tools. And we know we've seen at a couple of the hot spots changes like full throttle with their partially enclosed and concrete structure. I don't think there have been any physical changes at Coffee on the Rocks, which was a hot spot, but hopefully some awareness at least came about through all of that community input. So what questions do folks have at this point, or comments?
I'll just say I like that approach that you said, having that tool to be able to give to new police officers or refresher course. I think that's spot on. It saves time down the road too on your part, and it just helps make sure we're teaching them and having them have the tools that they need to do their job. So, thank you.
Lacking other questions and comments, thanks for the update.
Sir.
And we can move to item 3. You didn't have anything, town attorney, okay. Off-highway vehicles, golf carts on roads. Okay.
And then I might need a little help pulling this one up. Will it auto-populate? I mean, I'm sorry. Don't know how this is segues into the next one. Oh, you know what? I might have figured it out. Oh, I was so close. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so asked to give a little, my thoughts on potential use of off-highway vehicles. I'm gonna say OHVs a lot, so I don't have to try to choke on the word. Low-speed vehicles, I'm gonna see LSVs a lot on our town streets. So a little background on this is that I'm only talking through the lens of public safety. I'm very confident there'll be significant pros and cons to the potential ordinance that would allow these that I won't be touching on or probably wouldn't have any expertise or knowledge on. And then further follow-up on that is that this is a very complicated subject, the way these are defined in CRS and the different pieces of this and the way different codes address with OHVs versus LSVs and Colorado statutes. And I'm fairly confident that there might be a question or several questions asked that I might have to get some review on. Luckily, the town attorney here as well to help me out with that. But I'm going to do my best to give you my thoughts, things I've found on it and conversations I've had through that lens. There are definitely some pros to a potential ordinance that would allow these types of vehicles. Smaller vehicles undoubtedly have potential for reduced congestion. It's just a size issue. Smaller vehicles, you can fit more of them on our roadways. That leads into road capacity being higher for these versus conventional vehicles. And then another one, depending on if we're looking at LSVs versus OHVs, the potential in noise complaints is a thing as well. Obviously, internal combustion engines make noise that an electric vehicle does not, and it would be hard to deny that. In the cons is something I've been dancing around since we started talking about this. There is a big misconception under what is a golf cart, what is a low-speed vehicle, and what is an off-highway vehicle. Any potential county ordinance would need to make sure that's clearly defined, very, very succinctly put out there about what it is that we would be allowing. The golf carts, I'll get into this a lot. I would be very strongly against that. There's no safety features. There's no lights on them. It's what you literally go around on a golf course on, right? LSVs and OHVs are a little bit different, and we can talk about that a little bit. A piece of this would also be a con would be the amount of public education efforts that would be required for a low speed vehicle. They still have to have headlights, taillights, turn signals, meters, speedometers. It can't have a handlebar for steering. There's a lot of requirements that would go into that for an LSV. And I do have some concerns about it just being a cultural thing about, hey, you can go up to Estes and drive golf carts around on the streets. And clearly it's more complicated than that under CRS and what we could allow. One of the concerns I have is that low-speed vehicles, by definition, are limited to 35 miles an hour. They can't go faster than 35 miles an hour, or they can't be LSVs. But we do have streets that are above 35 miles an hour, and would these be congesting those? Per CRS, you still, if we're going the OHV route, would still need to make sure you have a driver's license, insurance, eye protection for adults, helmets for children, and making sure that that's clearly defined and something that we can talk about and culturalize and get the public, both our visitors and our local residents, trained up on all of that would be big. Limitations on not being able to travel down state highways is another big piece I have in this. It's a concern of mine, and it kind of goes back to our flock conversation. We're a really neat thing here in Estes Park where we have these major highways that feed into our town, but it is a different animal that we have here in Estes Park in that much of our major thoroughfares through town are state highways. And while we could enact an ordinance that would allow you to cross that highway, we wouldn't be able to allow an ordinance that would allow you to go down the highway. So you could cross 36, but you couldn't travel 36. Say would go for 4 and 7. There are several streets that happen to dead end into our highways where if you were going down them and this happened, you'd be forced to turn around rather than go down them. And with that comes that complication that I just kind of wanted to note in there. So much of our main thoroughfares and our main ways to get around happen to also be state highways that it complicates the issues. Hand in hand with that a little bit is a concern that I have is we have a unique traffic situation here for much of the on-season, if you will, with our seasonal visitors and guests. You know, you might have someone from out of state or even out of the country that's a driver that's unfamiliar with even our nation's laws or those Colorado laws, and now throw into the mix that they can jump into either an OHV or an LSV. And I worry about what that traffic management piece looks like. And that's just anecdotally me giving you my thoughts. One of the things that did come up, and I worked with Dana Klein about this, is there'd be a problem with our paid parking and our parking enforcement issues because we would either need to exempt these vehicles from paid parking or figure out some other mechanism by which they could do paid parking because the plate wouldn't be on there to read that. And the ordinance would have to have some clear definitions on how we navigate that issue. And it's just something I want to bring to your attention. This is one that, the next piece is one that I do have a lot of concerns about, and that is this. I know it was a topic of a recent town board meeting. Our unique, I'll just say it that way, our unique town border. Like, we don't have this nice circle or a nice rectangle, right? And a lot of our roads, and I believe the trustees get traffic complaints about somebody complaining down Fish Creek Road or Fish Hatchery Road or something like that, where you literally go 800 feet of county, then 1,200 feet of town, and then another 60 feet of county, and you're just hopscotching through different jurisdictions. I'm very concerned for the state patrol and the county deputies that if we enacted this and allowed it in the town, the load that will get put on them by people frustrated of people skipping through the unincorporated areas that would either affect the state patrol or the county as people either through ignorance or apathy are happy driving one of these vehicles through town, but then wanting just to poke in and out of the town limits. I will tell you my biggest concern with this, and this is my number one, is the occupant safety during an EMVA. These are not like modern vehicles that meet these airbag thresholds and crash rating kind of thing. I would be concerned about one of these vehicles versus a full-size pickup versus a full-size SUV or something bigger. In my terms, when something bad happens, you're always gonna be the nail and you're not gonna be the hammer if you're one of these and we have an MVA on our streets. So when you kind of put all that together, I think if we moved forward with this, it would, my ask and my hope and my recommendation would be that the ordinance clearly identifies the scope under which of these types of vehicles could be used and where. I worried a little bit about, again, just this general idea of, hey, just like you can go to Uray or Moab and drive these on the streets, that would just be this culturalized thing that can occur here. And non-residents would make the assumption that, well, that means I can take it down the bike path. That means I can drive this down the bike lane when it's congested with full-size vehicles. Just kind of all those things wrapped into there. I think it would be very helpful to have a very thorough ordinance on addressing all these things that I talked about. And because in the end, I do believe, no matter how beneficial these are, it will probably just that public education piece, understanding the complications of this, probably be increased call load for dispatch in the PD as we try to sort through all of that. But those were the thoughts I had on a potential ordinance that might look something like that.
You can switch forward to that last
Oh, sure, absolutely,
slide
sir.
if you want, just so it,
Yeah.
people,
Yep.
others can see it. Who is suggesting bringing a proposal for an ordinance forward?
No one that I know of, but I think that was what I was asked to address, is if a potential ordinance came forward. But I will defer to whoever that would be.
We've had, obviously, we've got this burgeoning problem with the e-bikes and faster, and the scooters and one-wheelers and different
Yeah.
kind of things that are zooming in and out of traffic already. And I anticipate that is only going to get much more numerous, and we have to manage that issue too.
Yes, sir.
I'm on the opposite piece of, as I was on the flock safety stuff, which I'm pretty eager to see that technology. I don't like this idea at all. I mean, the mayor of Lyons drives around and gave me a tour of Lyons in her little golf cart and everything, but it's a different place down there, and if it works for him, great. But I just don't see adding to the melee that we already are developing with all of the personal vehicles. So I have a problem with this.
So I was the one that brought it up. I was. And the reason why is I just gotten back from Moab, and they have them all over the place. And forget me, and I don't know if those are state highways too, but I'm assuming they are, that go through Moab, the state highways that go through Moab, but I don't know that or not. I brought it up because I thought, and all your cons are good cons. I don't know if good con is a way to say this, but are points taken, and I don't disagree with them. I just thought that we maybe could decrease our traffic on the road by having people be able to use these and jump in them and go. It is like an e-bike, which I have no issue with e-bikes. So Mary and I are on opposite poles tonight, which is okay. But there are some pluses to that, and I guess the minuses too. I get the safety issues and the way people drive around here. I'm not sure if we shouldn't just outlaw motorcycles in the first place. So, we could go to safety all we want. We can go to, people should be walking because they can be run over. So I think we have to be careful about that. I do think the way we're situated with the state highways and the amount of traffic that's in the summer, I think it would be difficult. And the fact that we would be crossing county, I get those are probably pretty good factors. But I definitely wanted to open the issue to talk about it, because I go to some of these other resort communities which are filled with tourists, and they are, now granted, a lot of those communities are based on their ATV uses. So like Moab, people are going there with all their off-road vehicles. And we don't really have the same kind of visitors here. So I understand that too. But I wanted to start the conversation, even if it's you know, in not prime tourists or something like that. I just think it keeps some of the people off the road. And all we talk about is energy conservation, and here's a way of conserving energy. And we're all like, no, we don't want that. You know, we'd rather have those electric cars with the batteries from, you know, the Congo. But anyway, you know, I still think it's worth the conversation, and, you know, for the same reasons that we're talking about energy conservation and traffic. So, you know, most of the ATVs don't give off as much as emissions as anybody else does. And I just don't know how these other communities, and it may be, like I said, that they were based around these vehicles in the first place, and that's how they get by with it more, and that might be absolutely the answer. But I was one that brought it up for those reasons.
And you are correct too also that in Moab, a lot of these complications are because Colorado revised statutes. Utah state law might not make that an issue that we have. Just a guess.
My respect for you is still at a very high bar. It has not changed. Okay.
We kind of do away with your need for flock cameras.
Right, right,
Tie it together, yeah. If you don't have license plates.
right.
The only thing I've ever gotten a question about this, and this is a totally different outlook on this, and maybe there's a way we can do it through permit or allowances or something, but I had one of the hotel owners who owns several hotels on Hotel Row down here, and they do shared maintenance, or their housekeeping people go back and forth, and they said they got in trouble because they were going down, not the road, but the bike path on 34. But it kind of made sense for them to have a golf cart to go do one hotel, and all they're doing is going around the corner to the adjacent property. But they had to switch to using a vehicle, like a truck, loading everything up, driving basically 50 feet, pulling off, putting everything into a golf cart on the other side of the line, and then doing their hotels, because I think they got cited for having their golf cart on the bike path. And Travis is amazing. He knows what I'm talking about. And I get it. I mean, I use the bike paths. I don't want to have golf carts on there. Although those pedicabs take just as much room on the lake as any golf course would. And people are driving those crazy and stuff. They just don't have a motor in it. But I don't know if there's a way to address some of those needs, those businesses, because it really makes sense if you've got two hotels next to each other, same owner, same ownership, you're trying to do housekeeping, and maybe, I think in this case, the laundry's in one hotel and they don't have a laundry in the other, and they're going back and forth. And all they want to do is just run it back and forth with their golf cart to serve their own building.
Kind of a business exemption you might.
Yeah,
have.
and I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think it seems like there could be some way we could handle that and allow them to do their kind of business there, that some practical sense in there. I don't know what it is, so it must not be that obviously practical, but something to address that situation.
And that may be one that's better for maybe the town administrator, or town attorney than me, but. See what I did there?
There's always a way. It's something we can look into more. I think the use case of that is probably gonna be fairly limited. I could imagine something where you draw a perimeter line, because you wouldn't want people, you know, if you create a business use exemption, somebody that has a pedicab business or a golf cart rental business might say, well, I'm using that exemption and letting people drive it around the lake. But if you carved it out pretty narrowly and had some sort of permitting system that allowed it.
Adjacent property.
Yeah, you might end up creating a rule for one property owner, but if it makes sense, it might be something that's worth pursuing. We can take a look at that and see if there's something that could fit in without creating problems on our bike paths in town.
Well, there is more use than just Hotel Row. So out on Fall River Road, this happens all the time on the bike path. So this happens from hoteliers below Nikki. Well, I guess I can't say Nikki's anymore. Petey's, I'm dating myself. Anyway, all the way up to where the bike path ends. Okay? And then again, where the bike path starts, I've seen. So anyway, it is happening. And it's because there are owners that have multiple properties. And so they're using their golf carts from not only cleaning things, but I've seen hauling luggage. You know, I mean, it's being used. So I think it would warrant talking about it because it's being done. And I'm surprised maybe they haven't come forward, but maybe they're just, silence is better than, it's better to ask permission than forgiveness or whatever it is, the opposite is, right?
I suspect they haven't come forward because they haven't been cited because nobody's turned them in.
Exactly.
So,
But I think there is a need for something. Because, you know, pulling off out into onto the road on some of these really bad curves up there is dangerous, number one. And they're just going a short distance and then they're having to pull off. It just causes more congestion. So I think it's worth a visit on something like that. But it's just not being done there. So I think we need to make it's a more broad look.
I do think we'll want a Transportation Advisory Board conversation about this too, and maybe a recommendation to the board, given the fact that, you know, this has the potential, if it becomes a frequent use item, to create conflict with other trail users. And if we're going to expressly permit it, we'll want to make sure we fully evaluate what those conflicts could look like and what the relative risks and benefits are.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
I think those are fair points about those particular circumstances or situations with some of our commercial uses. And I think Tab weighing in is really helpful too, especially considering that our trail network is only going to continue to expand. And we're not really in charge of all of the trails that people may access with golf carts too. So that's something to consider. So yeah, I went back and looked. I think we asked for this. I think we started talking about it in October. I went back and looked because I was like, when did we? I remember this coming up. So Marie, thanks for coming clean about being the one to request it. I think it feels. I think I would feel a little bit differently if, let's say, like Carriage Hills came to us and said, hey, we as a community, you know, neighborhood in this community really want to have the possibility to use golf carts or OHVs around our neighborhood. Would you be able to pursue an ordinance and something that's particular? I would be, that feels a little bit more attainable to me. The idea of creating an ordinance that would basically be extremely challenging to enforce if it was a more blanketed ordinance, that is a little bit of a turnoff for me, especially with the inclusion of the state highways. I just can't imagine how that would work in our connectivity with some of the county roads and the unincorporated segments of our community. So I think I'm not like chomping at the bit to have anything in place. I think addressing the situations, the particular ones that came up, sounds reasonable, but otherwise unless there are specific areas of our community that have demonstrated they'd like to see this and we could pursue something that would fit there, kind of like Rain Dance in Windsor, you know, that they've got kind of some structure in that specific development or neighborhood. Otherwise, as a community-wide or as a town-wide one, it seems like we'd be setting ourselves up for failure as well as some potential safety concerns. So I think it was a really helpful exercise, a good conversation, but I probably wouldn't go after something town-wide at this point, personally.
And I'm not even disagreeing with that. I think you're afraid of authority. I'm not. But I mean, I still see, even in areas like, I mean, I was thinking about a grocery store, but I guess you have to cross State Road almost no matter where you live to get to a grocery store. But like within neighborhoods, you know, I just don't think there's anything wrong with going to a neighborhood party around the block and being in a golf cart. Well, yeah, I know you don't like golf carts, but I'll say something bigger than a golf cart. But, you know, I mean, I just think that we just say a blanket no across the board. I think we're maybe not trying hard enough. You know, that's my deal. And so we always hope for these, like our neighborhoods to become neighborhoods, because Estes Park is rampant not having neighborhoods. The people, like our neighborhoods, don't really communicate with each other, neighbors. And, you know, and I found that even growing up, we talked about when the kids were growing up, the kids were scattered around town, so that was part of it. But I think it just increases that community feel to be able to do something like that. And, you know, I'm not, you know, maybe the cons outweigh the pros. and I don't disagree with that. But I just think to blanket say no, I don't think so. I just don't like to blanket say no about anything, except for block cameras.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
the on-road thing was what I was really steering against. I had this vision of these everywhere on every highway, every street, the challenges of parking, crossing. He listed them all. I don't need to list the cons again that are in there. But I certainly see the value of it for very localized kind of things. And if we were to move forward on defining an ordinance for it, I think it would have to be very well managed in localized areas like that and adjacent businesses, et cetera.
I agree with Marie on the outskirts. I don't see in-town usage being viable. Like you said, it's too many state highways. How the different states, I mean, down in Texas on the island, what's that island, South Texas, I can't even think of.
Corpus Christi.
Not Corpus Christi, but all the way down. South Padre. There is golf carts everywhere and tons of people. So I get that every state has different regulations, but I would like to see about a concept of just within, if you don't go out on the highway, if you stay within town roads or something like that, maybe a trial period. But I hate to say no too, just like that. I don't agree with it downtown. I think that's a no-brainer. But I could see these pockets of being allowed and somehow being able to, for business or just to go to the neighbors or what have you. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Are we hearing a demand for this? I mean, are we,
For my house,
huh,
for my house.
from you? Yeah, other from you, or, I mean, no one has talked to me about it, I haven't heard anything, gosh, I wish we could drive around our courts around town, I mean, are we solving a problem that doesn't exist?
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I don't think there's a huge demand. I think it's worth the conversation and maybe opening the conversation. Maybe now that we've opened it, we will have a demand. Maybe we'll have a flood of, 5 emails saying, no, don't do it. I don't know. But I think to open the conversation about is there even a possibility, I think is important. Because I think there's so long that we haven't allowed it, that people are even not even thinking about it. Except for the ones that are doing it and just not getting caught. So, anyway. So even
So-
open the conversation is important.
Yeah, so it sounds like having more discussion about it in some limited type of experimental ways is a worthy topic for many of the trustees. I'm not sure who would hold that project and do some preliminary definition or discussion, but town administrator, is there, what other direction would we offer on this? There seems to be a general thought of, well, let's talk about it in very limited ways. And maybe the fact that there's not a great demand is good news, that there wouldn't be a dam burst of activity.
I've heard interest in exploring the business use for servicing multiple hotels or something of that nature, a narrower use that we could bring forward. I've heard some interest in the outskirts discussion, or not a blanket no. I'm not sure what staff would do with that at this point from a crafting a regulatory approach that the board could evaluate. If there's a desire for kind of a specific test case or trial case, we could put something together for consideration. Absent that, we'd really be taking a shot in the dark.
Yeah, and I don't want you to do that. I mean, I don't want to spend all the staff time to do something that people aren't interested in. I do think looking at the business aspect is important for the hotels, but I would plead for the community that if they're interested in something like this, to start voicing the possibility of it. That's all. I just want to open the conversation. Carriage Hills, for example, which is, majority of Carriage Hills is not even us. But, you know, that community may decide, hey, we want to allow golf carts or something like that. And just a thought, but I just thought it was worth the conversation to open it and probably not spend a whole bunch of staff time on it until, you know, we start getting this flood of people emailing saying they want to do it.
Well, perhaps this test balloon will show up in the media somewhere, and people might come out and say what they want to say about it. So I think that's sufficient at this point. Chief Stewart, thanks. You were the whole show. Thank you. Yeah. We, any on the future study session items, it's at the very bottom of the study session agenda here. Okay, Town Administrator.
Mayor, just two tonight. We'd like to schedule a Bighorn parking structure design update for July 8th. And we can add the business use of paths for golf carts or something of that nature to a future study session approved unscheduled list. Would the board like that to go to tab for consideration discussion before it comes back to?
Sure.
Yeah. Those are the only items I have tonight, Mayor.
Okay, any others from trustees?
Yeah, did we want to follow up on the VEP discussion?
Thank you, Trustee Lancaster. It would be good to have a approved unscheduled item for the Visit Estes Park intergovernmental agreement edits.
Anything else? Okay. With that being said, this session is adjourned. We will be back at 7 sharp for the board meeting.